معكم مشرف اللغة الإنجليزية عبير الحميدي. كتاب اليوم Traveler 1 Module 3 Grammar Part D and Vocabulary Part E. Now, in the previous lesson, we read a passage about a description of a city, and today one of the objectives is to make comparison. It's very common to describe people or places. Today we're going to take that lesson, how to describe different kinds of nouns. Now, in the passage, these sentences were mentioned. The first sentence, Sichuanese food is hotter than other types of Chinese cuisine. The Yangtze is the longest river in Asia. For one of the most beautiful sceneries in the country, visit Zhujiagou Valley. The scenery is more spectacular than anything I've ever seen so far. Now, we have a couple of questions. To be able to answer these questions, we have to know the meaning of these words that I have put in front of you. Now, the first question is, which of the examples above include adjectives in the comparative form and which in the superlative form? So we have to know, what does comparative and superlative mean? The second question, which word do we usually use after adjectives in the comparative form, and which before the adjectives in the superlative form? To be able to answer these two questions, we're going to go through details about the adjectives and the comparative forms. Now, you can find the lesson on page 49, okay? So we want to know these names. The first one, comparative form. When you have the comparative form, it means you're comparing two nouns, okay? You're saying Ahmed and Saad, you're saying city A, city B, house A, house B. So you have to have two nouns, one of them in the position of a subject and the other one in the object form. So you are comparing, usually two. Now, to be able to compare, we have to go through the adjectives themselves. Now, we have many kinds of adjectives. Today, or in this module, we're going to take three, most of the most known or most used adjectives. If you have one syllable, like for example, large, small, fast, high, that kind of adjective is called one syllable adjective. It's short. Now, to be able to make the comparative, you say smaller, you add the ER at the end, this is the suffix, and then you put than. So you say house A is larger than house B, or car A is bigger than car B, and so on. Now, what if you have three or more syllables? Like, for example, expensive, comfortable, or important. They are more than three syllables. Can you add a suffix? Can you put another ER at the end? It's too long. So you can use more before the adjective. Also, you're going to use than. So this is very important to compare between two. If it's one syllable adjective, you're going to use ER and than. If it's more than three syllables, you're going to use more and than. You have two examples in your book. This is, I took that part from the grammar page, 129, the page. John is older than Peter. Okay, older is a short one syllable adjective. We added ER and then we put than. The second example, my watch is more expensive than yours. Okay, we added more, expensive, the adjective of course, and then you put than. Now, what if you have the superlative? The superlative form of adjectives, it means that you have a group of things, group of nouns, and one of them is the highest or the extreme. You have the highest quality of the group. You want to say that that noun surpassed the other nouns. If you want to add, again, we have to go through, when you compare, of course, one noun to a group of objects, or group of nouns, it's up to you. If it's one syllable, like it's like, as we said, large, small, fast, and high, and you have one house which is very, you want to show that it's the one that has the highest level of that, for example, place, you say, you add the before the adjective, and then you add est at the end as a suffix, okay? And because you're comparing, it's a superlative, but you're going to tell me that that house surpassed all the houses you have, so you're going to use of or in the town, for example, or in town, and so on. For example, here you have the example, John is the oldest boy in his school. So in all his school, he's the oldest boy. Now, what if you have 3 or more syllables, like, for example, expensive, comfortable, and important, and you want to say that your house or that watch, or for example, you know, that question is very important to you, and you have 5 questions, and this is only the one that you feel like it's very important, you're going to use also the, but instead of, for example, a suffix, you're going to use most before the adjective, and of or in town, for example. Here you have an example in your book. This watch is the most expensive of all. Again, this is a superlative. You are comparing one subject or one noun to a group. So you're going to tell me that it's the highest quality of the group. So if it's a short or one syllable adjective, you're going to use the and est, of course, and then you have of them all or in the town. And if it's like more than 3 syllables, you're going to use the, most, and of or in. Okay? Now, the third type of adjectives or forms, they are called irregular. What does it mean? It means they don't follow the same rules. You cannot use er or, for example, est, or you use, for example, more or most. You have to change some of the forms. Of course, you know most of them: good, bad, far, many, much, and little. What if you have a very good place that you like to visit, or you have, like, let's say, a very bad place you want to advise your friends not to go to, or that house is very far from your house, that, for example, your house is far from your school or a shop. What if you have a lot, like much and many? What if you have little? You want to compare using these forms. Now, if it's between two, comparing, like house A, house B, dish A, dish B, restaurant A, restaurant B, you're going to say, for example, restaurant A is better than restaurant B. To compare, okay, you have to have than. If it's bad, I don't like negative sentences, but sometimes you need to say that sentence. You say, for example, A is worse than B, okay? If it's far, you can say house A is, you say further than house B, or okay? If you have any kind of, for example, sentences with these forms, you have to use the one in your table. Now, what if you have a group of restaurants in that town and you want to tell me that you have one favorite restaurant? You say, for example, restaurant A is the best restaurant in town. Or, for example, dish A is the best dish, for example, in the menu. What if you have, like, for example, I don't like negative sentence, but if you want to show that that place is not good, you could say it's the worst place, the worst, for example, hobby, the worst routine, whatever you want to describe it. When you want the superlative, you want to show the extreme or the highest level of that adjective. If that house or that, for example, market or that shop is very far from your house, you can say it's the furthest house. We have the least favorite, the most favorite, for example, let's say place for example, in my country. So these, you have to you have the reference, of course, in the grammar book. You have to study them. You're not going to figure out, is it one syllable? No, these are irregular forms, so be careful when you have them between brackets, okay? Now, let's go back to our questions. Do you remember the sentences in the first part? They say that you have, this first sentence, you have hotter than, food is hotter than other types of food. You have more spectacular than. So if you have hotter than, more spectacular, the first one is one syllable, okay? That's why we use er and than. The second one, more than 3 syllables, that we use more than. What is the same about that? These two sentences, both of them are comparative. You're comparing two. Now, let's look at the second question, or the second sentence, sorry. The longest, okay? You have the and est because it's one syllable, and you have the most beautiful because you have more than 3 syllables. Now, what are they? They are, you're going to express the extreme or the highest level of that adjective. It means it's the superlative. The first and the fourth sentence include adjectives in the comparative form. The second and the third sentence include adjectives in the superlative form, okay? Now, here is the reminder. What do you use? We use the word than after adjective in the comparative form. This is to answer question number 2. And we use the word the before adjectives in the superlative form. So sometimes you find these words in sentences. We're going to see it now. Sometimes they're like clues. Yani when you see, for example, the or than, it means like they're telling you, okay, be careful, it's one syllable, two syllables. Sometimes you don't. You have no clues. They put the adjectives for you, so you have to correct and add all the parts of the adjective. You have to put the and est. So be careful. Do not depend on having these words all the time, because sometimes you don't. Now, in your book, we have other forms of comparison. This is something that I like, because it's different types of expressing comparative in a different way. For example, in the question here, or in the sentence, she says, or the passage says, the Yahtzee isn't as long as the Amazon. It's not the same. So they're not the same length. So what does it mean if they're not the same? Is it A, that the Yahtzee is longer, or the Amazon is longer, or they are the same length? Of course, we know that the Amazon is the largest, the longest river in the world. So we're going to say, of course, we're going to answer it after. Now, if you have an adjective and you want to say as and as, it means they are the same. House A, okay, is as large as house B. When I use that form of comparing to, it means I'm giving them the same quality. They are the same length, the same height, the same, for example, price, okay, as large as expensive as. If they're not the same, one of them is taller, one of them is larger, one of them is more expensive, but I want a different form. Like you can say house A is bigger than house B, but you don't want to use that form. You can say house A is not as large as house B, okay? It means house A is bigger than house B. You would think, okay, why can't we use house A is bigger than house B? Okay, you can use that form, it's correct, but they say you can use other forms to compare. If you negate the fact that they are not the same, it means one of them is larger, one of them is more expensive. It's like a different form of comparison. But it's okay, you can use the regular one that you use, like the ER or ES, the ER, for example, or the more with the 3 syllables, but this one is like a different form. In this case, in this sentence, if it's not as long as, I'm negating the fact that they're the same size, it means the Amazon is longer, okay? Of course, because we know that the Amazon is longer. Now, this is very important. What is so special about that form of comparison? It's so easy that you can use the same form with all kinds of adjectives. Not like the first form, like ER is different, and then you use, for example, more, and you have irregular forms. No. Here, it's so easy. If they are the same, you say house A is as big as house B, watch A is as expensive as watch B. For example, you could say walking is as good as exercising. For example, this is just an example. So even irregular forms of adjectives can be used in that type of writing. Now, what if they're different? Like, for example, you say house A is not big as house B. You can say house A is not as big as house B. It means they're not the same. Or my watch is, for example, expensive and your watch is more expensive. So I can say my watch is not as expensive as your watch because mine is cheaper. If, for example, I cooked a dish and it's not very good and your dish is very good, I can say my dish is not as good as your dish. Of course, it's okay. You can use that form, or you can use the regular one. It's like your dish is better than my dish. It's fine. You can use both forms, but this is just another way of comparing forms of adjectives, and you can have any type of, as long as your idea is clear, it's correct. Now, in your book, page 49, you have practice. They want you to complete the dialogue. I'm going to do it with you, and I'm going to show you the clues before we do it. Now, it's a part of a dialogue, and I want you to read the sentence. It's very important to read the sentence. Is it comparing to, or you have a group of nouns and you are going to describe the highest quality of these nouns? Now, I'm going to show you the clues that I was telling you about. That's one of, it means one. You are telling me that of the group, one of them is, and I'm comparing now, I'm using the superlative. And here you have in town, another clue, okay? So if it's in town, in Old Town, that is the worst, yes, correct. Now, in the sentence number 2, you have than. This is like easy because you know that you're comparing two nouns. You have irregular form of good. If you have two restaurants, you're going to say better than. If you have, for example, as, okay? If you have as, it means they are the same, and you are, describing that dish, or for example, that food, it's as tasty as. If it's expensive, and you have than also, more expensive. If you have, for example, as, but it's negative, not as, quiet, it's the same. You're saying that they are the same. Also, if you have in the shopping center, this is like in all the group, you say it's the cheapest, okay? These are the answers. Now, we're going to move very quickly to this exercise group. If you turn the page 50, we have these vocabulary. Also, they're adjectives describing places. I'm going to go through them very quickly with you. Now, okay, 3e, urban life. Now, these adjectives, crowded, peaceful, ancient, noisy, safe, popular, historical, and cozy. Now, I want you to look at the sentence. I'm going to describe it for you now. I'm going to explain it, but sometimes in the test or if you're asked to answer a question, you don't have anyone to explain. So go and read the line. Within the line, you will find clues that will help you to figure out the meaning. If I say the bus was crowded and I couldn't get in, I can't get in because the bus is what? It's crowded. It means it's full of people. There are many people in the bus, I can't get in. Okay, number 2, I get tired of life in the city. Life in the city does not suit me. I like the countryside. It means I need the quiet and calm. So if I say peaceful, it means I want the quiet and calm. Now, if I say this is about ancient history, it's ancient, it's in history, but not any history, very old. It means that book is very old, or that, for example, place is very old. Now, noisy, this is something I'm sure you know, but if you can't sleep at night because your neighborhood is noisy, it's full of what? Full of noise. It's full of people are talking all the time. Now, if I say this street is very safe, the children can play, your children can play in that street, it means, of course, it's not dangerous. Now, if you have a place in town which is very popular, for a place that teenagers like to go there, a lot of people like to go there, it means it's very popular, it's liked by a lot of people. And here you have historical building. Historical building, like for example, in some cities, we have buildings that were way long in the history that we saved them. No one is allowed to live there, but you go and visit. What do I mean by historic? It means it's important in history. And the last word, cozy. It's difficult for me to explain it to you, but when I say the cozy cafe, cozy restaurant, you can sit there all the time, most of the time, you have fun and you don't think about leaving that place. It means it's comfortable and warm. As I said, I explained most of these words, but be careful. The words that I underlined are words that can help you. That's why it's important to read the word within the content, so it's easier for you to figure out the meaning, okay? These are the words. You can take a photograph. Each adjective has its definition. You have it in your book, of course, but I put them in order for you. Crowded, full of people. Peaceful, quiet and calm. Ancient, very old. Noisy, making a lot of noise. Safe, not dangerous. Popular, liked by a large number of people. Historical, important in history. Cozy, comfortable and warm. Okay? Now we're finished, but these are some of the grammar reference. Go in your book for page 129. I did not go through this. I don't think we have time, but I'm going to say it until I finish the lesson. Now, in order for you to add the ER, okay, to one syllable, you have to figure out what kind of word do I have. If you have at the end of these words, if you go in the book and read them very carefully, you will know the rule. But most of the rule says if you have at the end like short for example, shorter, no change, then you just add the ER. Sometimes you have E at the end, one of the vowels. So do you think you can add another E, or you just add R? Since you have E, you just add R. Now, if you have a word that ends in one vowel, one consonant. One vowel, it means one of these letters that you see, A, E, I, O, U, Y. And the end, you have the rest of the letters. For example, G, F. If you have that one consonant, one vowel, you double the last consonant and then you add the ER or EST. Now, very important rule also, if it ends in Y, do you see the last one, easy? What do I do with the Y? I change it into I and then I add the ER or EST. Sometimes you drop it, they say you drop it or you omit it, or you change it into Y. I know I'm going fast for you, but it's okay. You can go to that reference, page 129, and you can go through these spelling rules and be careful how do you add the ER or EST to these words or to these adjectives, okay? Thank you so much. We have finished our lesson today. Thank you.